Hi everybody, Sai here. I'm one of the team that's organising Halton Rocks 2020. There's going to be quite a lot of Halton Rocks content coming your way over the coming days and weeks as we start to reveal the lineup. And we're going to let you know which artists and which bands you can see on the night. Really exciting lineup, really strong. Looking forward to sharing it with you guys. Thank you for watching this video. To everybody who's watching it, just by watching this video, you're taking an interest in what we do and supporting us. Everyone who's following our event page on Facebook and the various social media that we're doing, thank you. So let's get on with it. We've got an interview for each act. I got together with the team before we did this because we knew we'd need like a little introduction segment before each one. And the team said to me, look, we've got a little bit of budget. Lockdown measures are eased a touch now. We can drive to places if you want to film on location. What do you want to do? And it's been a long-standing ambition of mine to introduce musicians from in front of a baby gate, so that's a little box ticked for me. So we're on location at the baby gate, and let's have, without any further ado, the next act to appear at Halton Rocks 2020. Tony Swift from the Quicks. Tony, thank you so much for joining us for a chat about Halton Rocks today, and thank you to you and your band for agreeing to perform at Halton Rocks this year.
It's a pleasure, Si. Nice to speak to you, mate.
I've been interviewing quite a lot of people for Halton Rocks just recently, and it's funny because a lot of the people who I've been speaking to, I know them personally already, but this is the first time you and I have ever met. We're going to talk about the Quicks a little bit, but literally the first time I've ever met you in your life, and it's over camera. So tell me about yourself and your life in music and how it all started and what you've done prior to the Quicks. What's your whole story?
Well, the first actual, I mean, I've been quite lucky with the bands I've been involved with over the years. I mean, I've been playing guitar since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, as the saying goes. And then I got serious about it when I was about 11, 12, started learning proper chords instead of making my own chords up. And that just sort of progressed from there. I had a couple of messing about bit of jam sessions with lads that I grew up with, and that, you know, they weren't like in the friends and the circle of friends I had. There wasn't many musicians. There was only like me and another guy, and then another lad of a mate of mine decided, oh, well, you could play drums. So that was just all very amateurish at the time. That was when I was about sort of 17, 18. We used to do that, and then we seen this initiative called the Musicians Workshop, which was part to do with, it was some sort of government-related scheme, and we attended a place down in St Mary's down in West Bank, and it was basically called the Musicians Workshop. It was run by Greg Oldfield, you know Greg. It was to do with him, and that through that we got a band together, and that was the first real band. That was the Rycatchers that I was with. So I was lucky with them. I was with some really good, you know, like-minded musicians, like, you know, the King Brothers, Barry and Col Ogburn. And it was, you know, it was a sort of folk rock stuff sort of thing. I was playing a lot of mandolin at the time and stuff. So it was sort of folky, there's a little bit of Irish music in there. We were writing our own, you know, doing original stuff, playing various gigs. We used to sort of play down in the Snig before Brad had it. We used to have sort of gigs down there and Stories and places like that at the time. That was really good. So I was together there. I think we was together there about 3 or 4 years. Then I ended up in the second band I was in, which was the Chimneys. I was sitting in my house one day and I got a phone call off a mate of mine. Unfortunately, they were at a funeral, and Jody, who I ended up writing with, and he became our front man. He was playing at the funeral, and I had a phone call off a mate, and he said, oh, you got to hear this guy playing the guitar. He's really good, and he's singing and stuff. I plucked up the courage one day to just find out where he lived, and I knocked on the door, guitar over my shoulder, and from there, that's where we got the band together, in a sense that we started jamming together, and we found we had like the same musical tastes. And then we roped in his brother James to play bass, and James had never touched the bass in his life. Then he went, I think he started playing on like an acoustic guitar, playing 4 strings on an acoustic, just for jamming basically. And then obviously he'd learned the rudiments of it. He then got himself a bass guitar. And then we went through the same old struggle of trying to find a drummer. which is like, oh, it always seems to be the hardest thing to find. I think bass players and drummers, I always think are hard to get hold of. But we had in mind a guy that we wanted. He was living on our estate, big John Poulson, who eventually came to drum for us. And we was asking him, and he wasn't sure, and he was and ahhing. And in the end, I think it was just through the fact that we just pestered the life out of him that he joined, like. And from then, you know, we won a certain couple of Battle of the Bands, and it just clicked, and it was a really, really good, you know, really good setup. As I say, again, I've been quite lucky with the two previous bands, because we just seemed to click, and things sort of went in a good way. You know what I mean? There wasn't any sort of disagreements. It just sort of naturally progressed and was good. And then after that sort of run its course for a few years. And then I think I didn't stop playing. I just started writing a lot more solo stuff and just going out and basically playing sort of when I could, open mic stuff, you know, and various things like that. It just sort of, I was playing solo stuff. And then I'd met Craig a couple of times. Me and Craig had sort of knew of each other, you know, and as you do. We sort of spoke about getting something together again, you know, and got together. We'd done a little bit of writing, and again found out we had mutual interest in the same taste in music. We then approached Adam from Britain, our drummer. I'd known Adam from, he played in a band called Collide when I was playing with Chimneys, and then we had the other scenario then of trying to find a bass player, and we tried a couple of. I think we had like a guy at one point. We were going for rehearsals over in Runcorn. We had the guy standing in, who was just a guy who worked at the studio, and he'd basically stand in. He wasn't into the same sort of music, but it was good just to have a bass player, you know, and to help along and that. So then we knew Craig had knew Andy Craig from a previous band when he was in Polaris. So we sort of knew. I mean, obviously he's a great musician, Andy Frater, and he just sort of said to him, like, you know, would you be on board with it? And he had another think, and he said, yeah. So then, luckily enough, we established the lineup, like, you know.
Thanks for that, Tony. It's a great story, loads of interesting stuff there. And if I could, Tony, there's a couple of other bits on the story that I'd like to go back to and pick up on, if I could, because
yeah, sure, man.
One of the things you said there, when I've been interviewing people for Halton Rocks coming up, it's amazing how many times people who are quite established musicians now, they've said there was a really important moment early on when they've been encouraged by either something that's been from the council or from a voluntary organisation that's took them in and encouraged them. And you were talking about, forgive me because I've forgotten when you were telling me that it was a something music workshop when you were really young. What was it called?
Yeah, that was to say. That was it was like a government initiative thing. I wasn't working at the time, and it was one of them things where if you attended Monday to Friday, you got like an extra tenner in your benefit and stuff. But it was just like it was a good environment to be in because you were with like-minded creative people, and as I say, from that we sort of like, you know, there was little jam sessions where you'd end up with, you know, people. I was fortunate that I knew 3 of the guys previous to attending the workshop, and obviously, like you say, like-minded people, you sort of gravitate to each other. As I say, early on, everything was just very casual, like you say, when you sort of teenager stuff, and you know, you're not taking it sort of semi-serious. But then to get into that situation where you're in the environment where people are sort of focused totally on just the music and where they want to go with it. And we just all got our heads together and realised that, oh yeah, we like this and we like that. And as with every band, you've got to have a bit of give and take. And you know, it's all about understanding. And it was a good thing because you also seen how other groups worked and the dynamics of it. Because again, I think from the actual, from the workshop as it was called, I think there was a lot of bands sort of formed at that time. I think it's not like the early 90s. And it was good to see how other styles and influences coming from other people, and be, as I say, working around and being in the environment of like-minded people. So yeah, it was really beneficial for myself just to open my eyes to see how they do it and how we do it, and actually to have Greg there as well, who'd sort of been there and done it. Greg, as you know, he's like an elder statesman of the Halton music scene now. I would say Greg is. He'd probably kill me for saying that, but he was always good to bounce off and ask, various things, and he helped me a lot with sort of my songwriting and stuff, because I knew I could sort of write songs to a degree, but I think until you sort of go out playing, you don't have a soundboard. And of course, it was Greg that was always sort of saying to me, no, you're doing the right thing. And he helped us. He helped me personally immensely, and it was a good sort of footing into the scene, as one of a better expression.
And particularly, what struck me from the point of view of your story when you were telling your story is that when you were around that age, you were saying actually, not many of your group of friends were of a musical mind. You weren't actually in that to begin with. So were it not for that catalyst, if you like, you may never have gone down the route of being artistic and creative. And when you were telling the story as well, you mentioned Greg. I can't tell you how many times I've been speaking to artists lately. The number of times people who've said, you know what, when I was young and starting out, Greg was really encouraging, and he's done that.
Yeah.
He's quiet about it. He does it in the background. He doesn't want, he doesn't want praise. He doesn't want limelight. But quietly, he's influenced so many people when it really mattered. And I think that's really relevant at the moment, because what the main reason we're doing a Halton Rocks this year is the studio is celebrating 10 years that it's been running. And Greg's important to the studio, Louise, of course, all the people down there. So obviously it's been massive to you. It's been massive to a lot of people. These voluntary organisations, government-funded organisations, people like Greg Oldfield, people like the studio, how, in your words, how crucial is that to what we do?
It's paramount, I think, myself. It's absolutely paramount, because I think it's again, we didn't have, or there wasn't that sort of a staff. I mean, it's only in the early 90s as well. I think it was before you had sort of Pop Idol, which then became X Factor, and Britain's Got. I don't think there was any of that even on the TV at the time. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing or anything, but there wasn't that sort of thing of where, oh, you can do that yourself. I mean, like you say, I remember sort of watching programs and documentaries about like how the punk scene developed, and how that was it was all basically down to DIY, you know what I mean? You don't have to sort of, know every chord in the book, and you don't need to have like, a six Fender Stratocasters and a Marshall amp, you know what I mean? It's about basically what you had and using it to the best of, the best of your abilities. And again, that thing of sort of playing, you didn't have that sort of thing to look at on the TV and go, oh, well, yeah, I can do that. And when you get into that collective sort of this musician workshop, as I was saying, it's sort of saying, well, no, it's not rocket science, and it's not like, you don't need a degree in music, and you don't need to be able to read tab and this, that, and the other. It's just about get together, get yourself 3 chords, a cheap guitar and an amplifier, and see what comes out. And again, I sort of keep thinking it's almost like an organic sort of feeling, like, you know what I mean? If it's in you and you are in the right kind of environment, it'll come out, like, you know what I mean? And it'll come out 9 times out of 10 in a positive manner, But yeah, Greg was absolutely crucial to it, and I think now we need to get back to that of funding regarding the government and certain scenes like that, because the amount of time. I mean, I've always thought one of the biggest things, or one of the biggest letdowns I found in Halton, was the fact that we never actually had, or not to my knowledge, anyway, we never had a viable record company. A studio and a label. Sorry, not a company, a label. You know what I mean? You look at sort of in Manchester, when you go to Manchester, how certain scenes created there, and in Liverpool, where there was a hub where people again went to to meet, and again, like-minded people of creativity and stuff. But I always thought to myself, well, how come there isn't a label in Widnes or in Runcorn or in Halton? The other thing that was a big sort of big help was they then started doing the BTEC course at Halton College, which was in the rock and pop. It was a BTEC in rock and pop, which was in its infancy then. It was a little bit hit and miss because it was still in its infancy, as I say, and they were still finding their feet. But again, to go to college and then a wider expansion with different musicians again. And of course, you know, in your early 20s, you're soaking up so much influences anyway, you know, and it was like the beginning of grunge again, which was also, I thought, was getting back to the punk ethos. We need to get back to that. And I always think that's the one thing back in the 90s, because I mean, the amount of talent, you'd meet so many people, and the talent was just, you know, songwriters and from all genres, but not to have sort of a label where there was people committed to saying, well, okay, we'll get that band in and we'll sign them up to, and not so much in a sense of like, oh, you know, we're going to get you on top of the pops or anything like that, but just as a media of getting your material out there. And I just thought at that time, especially the early 90s, mid-90s, if someone had said, oh, well, I'm going to create a label and I'm going to put a bit of money behind it, and if someone actually had done that, and as you said, the word catalyst is a good word to say, because you'd have had so much of a springboard then.
I think you make a great point that during that time when things were flourishing, maybe one thing that might have been lacking was a really good nurturing label. But there were two things that we weren't lacking in that era. One of which I think remains the same, and one of which has changed. And I think the thing that we weren't lacking then that we're not lacking now is talent, because I think the talent pool is still there and it's the same.
Absolutely.
But I think the thing that we did have during that era that we've lost is the venues, because when I was a young person, and I've had this conversation with people before, when I was a young person in the 90s playing music, there was always somewhere to go and play music, lots of pubs, and the pubs supported bands. Pubs would have bands on midweek, it could be Monday night, there was always somewhere to go, and we've lost that now. And when you were telling your story, you talked about the Snake. It's a place that was putting on lots and lots of live music back in the day, and he's still doing it now.
I mean, Brad's always been a great advocate for music, and he's a massive music fan anyway. He's Brad, like, you know, Peter, who's got the Snake now, and even when he was sort of developing it, like, you know, the amount of times you go down there in the back room that is now where you play, you know, the amount of times I've heard people say, oh, you make great, you know, there was always a little stage there, and he said, like, you know, the amount of people would say, oh, Brad, you know, you do this and you do that. And we were always planting the seed within him, and I think Brad always had a passion for it anyway, that he ended up developing. I mean, now it's a great place to play, like, you know what I mean? And I think it's one of them places where it's a great venue historically, but it being on the banks of the river and it's under the bridge, and I mean, West Bank again is another one of them sort of places where it's always had a massive amount of talent down there, like, you know what I mean? Like, I know the twins, Gary and Carl Clevey, like, you know, and people like that, and Greg obviously was down from West Bank, but there was little pockets of people, and again, like you say, they all sort of homed in on the Snake, and it was always a place of, especially at the weekends, where you turn up and you could guarantee you walk in and someone would have a guitar and be sitting there playing and stuff. And yeah, I think it's somewhere to always have a focus on, and it's crucial to have that, you know, as I say, like a hub of or a hive of activity, one of a better word to say, I think. Yeah,
I think it's a shining example. I mean, I make no bones about it. I'm here in my capacity at the moment, first and foremost, to promote Halton Rocks and to promote the studio and life and the charity I'm involved with. But I got no problem at all giving a big shout out to the Snake, because this music scene, it needs people like Brad, and it needs venues like that.
Definitely.
We're going to come back to the present now, and we're going to talk about Halton Rocks. And for anybody who might be coming to Halton Rocks 2020 who has not yet crossed paths with the Quicks, what should people expect from the Quicks?
A lot of energy. We like to do a lot of energy. A bit of our audience participation is the name of the game, I think. It's because, like, I always think, I remember sort of when I first used to play, even as as a younger lad, like playing, used to play a lot of house parties and stuff where my parents, they sort of come home and get your guitar out and come and play in front of like all your aunties and uncles and stuff like that. And it was always something that my mum used to say to me was, if you sort of give off the vibe that you're enjoying yourself, how contagious that is. You know, I sort of get annoyed when you see these sort of musicians or these performers, artists, whatever you want to call them, that are giving all this maudling and, you know, I hate being up here, this is rubbish. You know, because to play in front of a few hundred or even 20 people, to play in front of that and have that audience, there's no better feeling in the world. And I think if you give off the feeling that, you know, well, I'm enjoying myself, I think it becomes infectious. So I think that's what we try. Well, I try and do, obviously, as being the singer in the band, is obviously make sure that we're giving off a feeling that, well, we are enjoying ourselves. It's not forced. It's not false. It's, you know, we do it because we enjoy it, and we hope people enjoy what we're doing. And, you know, I like to sort of give it that thing of, well, you know, if you want to clap your hands and stuff, get up and clap your hands. If you want to get up and dance, get up and dance. And I always sort of say this when, when we do our set. I'm a great believer in, and it's one of the things I've said in the past, is when I say, you know, if you don't make it enjoy tonight, you've only got yourself to blame, in a sense that, you know, it's Friday night, you've worked all week or whatever, and if you say to yourself, I'm going out on a Friday night and I'm going to go and watch a band. But if you stand there all night just holding your can of lager, but then you're going to go back to work Monday morning then and go, your mate will say to you in work, well, what did you do? Oh, I went to see a band Friday night. Well, what was that like? Oh, it was rubbish. Well, why was it rubbish? It was rubbish because you stood there with your can in your hand and didn't sort of think to yourself, oh, I'm going to interact. I'm going to, you know, clap my hands, and I'm going to, you know, you've got to make sure that you have a good time. Your own enjoyment is in your hands. And I always say that. When we're doing our set. I say, look, we can have a great night tonight, but you've got to participate as well. And that's what I believe.
So for anybody watching this who's planning to attend Halton Rocks 2020, don't be shy about getting up, because you've just heard it from the man himself. You are invited to take part and get up and do some movement and make some noise, right?
Absolutely. Sing at the top of your voice. Bring a rattle and a whistle.
You see, you shouldn't have said that. There's got to be 100 people with rattles and whistles now. All
the luminous painting. We go back to the rave scene then, Messiah. That'll be great. That then, yeah. Hopefully, if you can get it where it's audience participation, where we don't have to do much then.
There's a method to the madness.
That's definitely it, mate. Definitely it.
All right, Tony. So as you know, we're in a period of lockdown at the moment. Not totally sure when these interviews are getting put out and what stage in the lockdown will be. But I'm interested to know. I've been asking this to all of our acts, how you've coped and related to the lockdown. Not so much from a personal point of view, because I don't want to ask you to air your personal business, but from an artistic point of view, you know, as a musician. How do you feel about it? Have you noticed anything, observed anything? Has it affected you as an artist? How do you relate to this strange period as an artist?
I think one of the biggest things that's played, that I've thought about is this, without getting too political, is the disinformation about what's going on with the situation. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously, as much as people say, you know, the internet, good or bad, there's no limit on what people can post up. So obviously, I mean, I could say to you, ring you up and say, all right, Si, yeah, or have you heard that you can get coronavirus by opening your pack of crisps wrong? Something, you know, something really stupid, and then it spreads. The next minute, you're getting a rumour that you might have heard of 3 weeks later, someone else saying, oh, you can get it off a packet of crisps, and, you know, stupid things like that with its disinformation, and that's sort of worrying, because therein lies the scaremongering then, and you know, people sort of getting panicked over what they should believe and what they shouldn't believe. So that's been one thing that I've sort of noticed about it. But then again, the other thing as well is like the feeling in the air, is like you say, that a lot of people have pulled together. You know, the sense of community has seemed to have come back, or a sense of people caring. actually, you know, how your neighbour is across the road, and, you know, how the old guy is who lives around the corner and stuff, which is nice, you know what I mean? There's that. Someone even actually spoke to, I was speaking to an elder guy, he's in his 80s, and he was saying, like, he was only a child, I would imagine a toddler or just that, but he was sort of alluding to the fact, oh, it's like the, you know, the blitz and the war efforts and stuff like. I mean, obviously it's something we were never privy to, but it's nice to think that, yeah, that sort of feeling of community and that sort of feeling of, well, people started actually giving the monkeys about your neighbour that you might not know, and you might never speak to them again, but obviously showing a bit of concern and seeing that, you know, even if it's just a case of, you know, a phone call and getting back to that sort of people sort of showing a bit more care and a bit more interest in people's lives, like, in that sense, and making sure the welfare of people is you know, is at the forefront, like, you know, that's what I've noticed. It's just been that disinformation, but then obviously realising that there is a sense of community that's come back, and people do care. There are good people out there, you know. But I'm more about this disinformation, and just think it's funny that people can be told something, and then it becomes like Chinese whispers side as well. Do you know what I mean? They'll add a little bit on, or they'll drop a little bit out, and then next minute, and then confusion reigns. You don't know what to believe, and then you get the likes of our beloved Prime Minister, who is saying, "Well, yeah, you go out and you don't go out, and you stay in." Oh, you know, it becomes almost farcical then, doesn't it?
I know what you're saying. People need clarity, and I don't know if you.
Definitely, that's the word.
I don't know if you'd agree with me, but I think it's always been the case. I don't know if it's just humans in general, or if it's a British thing, that people have always been a bit too inclined to believe everything they read, and that's going pre-social media, when people used to get the news from newspapers. But I think the social media age has just sent it into the stratosphere, that people just believe everything they see.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I can get people saying to me, "Oh, you know, such and such a thing is the case," and I'll say, "Well, how on earth do you know that? Where have you got that from?" And they'll say, "Well, I read it on Facebook," and I think, "Oh my goodness."
Yeah.
And I think I should be at pains to point out there's lots of good things about Facebook as well, and I'm particularly eager to say that.
Definitely.
But I'm particularly eager to say that because we'll probably release this on Facebook, so I don't want to be slagged off.
Yeah, Facebook age, yeah, we love it.
So to the founders of Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all the social media, thank you for letting us put these videos out, but we are going to spend some time slagging you off.
Definitely, yeah.
Not really. We're not really slagging off. We're just making some social observations. So yeah. So we're in this lockdown. Like you say, it's a strange period. And one of the things I've been asking people is that there might be some people watching this who struggled and had a really hard time with lockdown. Is there anything that you'd like to say, or that you could say to people who's maybe not having such a good time at the moment?
If you're not having a good time at the minute, I think it's about, again, just try and make that effort to try and reach out to somebody, whether it is a member of family. I mean, families are, as we all know, families are a weird thing. You know, you can have a brother that you don't speak to, or a sister or an aunt or someone that you don't speak to, and we get in that sort of battle where, well, I'm not ringing in because he hasn't rang me, or I'm not ringing her because she hasn't ringed me. Well, if you're feeling like that and there's a memory, just make the call. That's all I'd say. Make the call. You know, you be the one to instigate the contact, and you be the one to sort of, because, you know, from little acorns grow, you know what I mean? And that's the way I look at it. Because, you know, recently, I mean, I don't want to sort of go into, recently I've had sort of a major bereavement in my family, you see, and it's funny to think that you don't sort of, again, you could take for granted that people are going to be there all the time, and you know, and it's not until, as Joni Mitchell said, you know, the way it goes, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And I think that more than anything now, with this lockdown and the way it's been, has come to the front, that you think to yourself, well, yeah, I'd hate to think that there's something that you never got to say to someone just because you're being maybe a bit stubborn, or maybe it's a bit of, I don't know, maybe you've done a slight indiscretion once, and you know, because people are forgiving, and especially if it's family and stuff. And I think if you are feeling that way, where, you know, you're feeling there's your isolation, or there's no one there for you, make the effort. I mean, I know obviously some people, they have problems with mental health and stuff like that. I understand that, And if you're aware of people that are maybe not as, not as outgoing, then you make the effort to make, and reassure them, put their minds at rest, and make the contact. So yeah, if it was to say anything, it was to make the call and reach out to people and let people know that you're there and you're willing to sort of listen and help and speak and stuff. That's it basically. That's what I'd say.
Thanks for sharing that, Tony. And I didn't know that, and I'm sorry that you suffered a loss just recently. But thank you for sharing it. And if it's prompted you to say those words, I'm sure there'll be people watching this that those words will have landed with somebody, and you've probably helped somebody today. So thank you for that.
That's no problem.
Moving on to Halton Rocks, because like you say, at some point we're going to come out of this lockdown, and when we do, we're hoping for a nice big party on October the 10th for Halton Rocks, and we'll all get together again. And we're really lucky when we put Halton Rocks on that we appeal to the music community for people to come and play for us and perform, and people do, and nobody ever hesitates to say yes. People always give up the time freely for us to raise money for charity and to put these gigs on. So I'd like to thank you for appearing. I'd like to ask you why the Quicks didn't hesitate to say yes, and I'd like to ask you why Halton Rocks and things like Halton Rocks is important.
It's become almost like it's an institution now, isn't it, Halton Rocks? I've always sort of, say for the last 10 years, you always hear about it, and it's always been one of them where if you are in a band at the time and you hear about it, and then you hear it going on, and you think to yourself, well, how come we never got involved? And there's always that thing of like, oh, well, why didn't we get involved? How come we not so much overlooked, or didn't we? So you've got to throw your hat in the ring, and that's, I think, when the opportunity came. We didn't have to think twice. It was like, yeah, we want to play it, and be part and parcel of it. It's just like, do you remember Wrecked All Day as well? That was another one that used to.
Yeah, mate, still going. He's Wrecked.
Yeah, well, that was another one of them that we still love playing, and again, it's that thing of when people come together that you sort of you reigniting old friendships, and so people that you haven't seen for ages, and it's good to you get, oh, what are you up to, and then, oh, this is my new band, and I love all that stuff. You know what I mean? When you find out where people are enjoying themselves and getting back into doing what they want to do, I think that's crucial. But I think with Halton Rocks, it's just the fact that it is such a keynote event. I'd say, especially for us, you know what I mean, to play it, and that it's one of them things that you think, when you go. Again, getting back to my earlier point about it, it's as good as we make it, and if everybody is. Again, let's make sure it goes off with a bang, and and 9 times out of 10, it is always a great day anyway. You know what I mean? So that's the way I look at it.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks for those words about Halton Rocks. We appreciate it, and like you were saying there, it hits home to me a bit what you're saying, because it always brings home to me the sense of community I feel about the music scene. So I always think if you go to Halton Rocks or Direct or any of those types of events, Barley Bash, there's lots. You can reacquaint old friendships with people who you've not seen for a good while, and you just pick right up where you left off. And whenever I turn up to any of them, whether it's one of the events I'm organising or other people are organising, as soon as I walk into the room, I think, right, I'm amongst friends,
That's it. It's it's that thing again of there's the amount of passion involved as well. You know what I mean? That people are doing it, and it's not coming from the angle of oh, it's about making money or making sort of bigging up people. It's about a collective, and it's about basically people all getting together.
It was at this point in the interview that we suffered a power outage, so we had to pause. Tony went indoors, and we picked it up again. Okay, so final question, Tony, for you. I've been asking this question to everybody, and it's just it's a bit of a silly question for a little bit of fun at the end of the interview. So when this interview gets out onto social media, we think we're going to be towards the end of the lockdown by then. We hope. But let's say, heaven forbid, for some inexplicable reason, we had to do lockdown all over again. Another 12 weeks in lockdown. But this time, you can choose one member of the local music scene to lock down with. And I would like to know, who would you choose and why?
Oh,
Put me on the spot, Si.
Sorry, Tony.
I'd have to say Craig probably out the band. I'd have to say my writing partner because we have good banter anyway, and I'd have to put up with him and his take on everything else is a bit of left of centre. So I'd say Craig probably. Yeah. That's what Craig done.
Yeah, his take on everything. He's an opinionated chap, our Craig, isn't he?
Just a bit, mate. Just a bit. Yeah. Sometimes he says he'll have an opinion on something, and it's so left of centre that you'll go like, it's the last thing I expected him to say. Like you say, he throws you the curveball. When you think he's going to say something like, oh, he probably slags something off, it's complete opposite. And then you'll go like, well, that's not the answer I was expecting. Like, so you definitely keep it interesting, Craig. I think if you're locked down for 12 weeks with him, mate.
Now you see, Craig, you could have come in on this interview and you should have done, because now you're not here. Me and Tony's just going to talk about you.
He won't mind that.
I mean, 12 weeks with Craig, Tony. Could you put up with his farts?
That's the only other thing, you see. I'd have to strictly sort of look at what his diet was as well. I think that's what it'd be like. Make sure he's.
You'd be stocking up on them masks, but it wouldn't be to contain the virus.
Terrible. I've never known anyone with such a toxic bowel movement.
Right. Who said these interviews can't be highbrow?
Well, that's it. Yeah. We reach a level, you see, that doesn't have to fluctuate between up or down. Then, mate, you see, that's what it is. Yeah. But I think, like, as I say, it's that thing of with this lockdown and stuff is how many people have discovered things about the partners or a member of the family that they never actually knew because of being. And so that's something I'd be interested to hear off people. Like, what have you discovered from the person you've been locked down with that you never realised? I think that'd be an interesting one.
That's a great question. So when we put this out, whether you're watching this on Facebook, or you're watching it on YouTube, whatever you're watching it on, Tony's just asked you a question there. What have you discovered about the people who you're locking down with that you didn't already know? That's a great question. And okay, so we're coming to the end of our chat, Tony. I want to thank you once again for spending all this time talking to me and to you and all the lads in the band for doing this. Just before we wrap up and say goodbye, is there anything you'd like to say to our viewers, whether it be about yourself or your band or your music in general, life in general, anything you'd like to say to our viewers before we go?
I'd just like to say, basically, once this is all over and done with, we all need to get back to supporting this live music. Get out and watch these bands. Get out and take part. Even if you're not a performer, if you're not a player, get involved. You might be into doing sound or lighting and stuff. If there's chances where you can get involved, just do it. Get involved, because the amount of enjoyment you get out of doing stuff like that, it's immeasurable. And I think, get out and see the bands and be part of it, because we need to support live music and keep it going.
Thank you, Tony. Great word. It's a brilliant.
It's been a pleasure, Science. I really enjoyed it, mate. Thanks very much. It's been
likewise, been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. That was a great note to finish on as well. Tony Swift and the Quicks, thank you.